We are the Poop Sisters, and we're here with the call of nature.
We realized as we're here in Northern California and we're off the grid actually, but people all around us who are on the grid are freaking out because they have no electricity, they have no phone, and they have no water. And we suddenly realized, what are they doing with all of their poop?
We have these massive power outages because of extreme fires here in Northern California, and everybody is so concerned because so many fires have been started from electrical lines being downed that they're just massive power outages in Mendocino and Sonoma County and other places in California. And people have been taking responsibility for their own waste and not pooping in water all over the world for hundreds of years.
So this is going to be a really basic video that's going to teach you how to do a very simple thing called pooping in a bucket. If you want more information, we'll try to, I've never done a YouTube video, honestly, but in the little thing down below, we'll put some links to more information if you want more detail, but this will work for you, this basic information.
So step one, get yourself 2 5-gallon buckets, at least one of them with a tight-fitting lid.
Fill the other one with some organic matter. So this organic matter that I have is some sawdust from a mill. Sawdust works. You can use leaves and duff. This is what duff is. Redwood isn't always the best because it is a little tannic. You can use, what else can you use?
Shredded paper in a pinch. Shredded paper does have dioxins, but it's certainly will compost, and it's better than nothing.
Newspaper would be better
Yep.
because it doesn't have the dioxin load in it, and most of the inks are biodegradable, I think, in newspaper. You can use straw, but it really tends to fill up because it's very bulky, so you end up filling up your bucket pretty fast with straw. But basically any kind of organic matter that you can scavenge together. What do you want to say next?
Okay, so step number 3, add a little bit of organic matter into your empty bucket so that things are not sticking to the bottom.
And then you can poop in your bucket. There's a couple different ways to do that. A long time ago, you can see this is pretty old, but we built a box that the bucket fits right into, sort of, that has a lid on it. So we can just open it up. We do then lift the lid up to lift the seat up to put the lid on later. You can also just put the seat right on the bucket, or I actually know people who just squat and poop on a thick layer of newspaper, fold it up, and put the whole little dainty package into the bucket.
After that, add a equal amount of organic matter onto your poop and put the lid, wipe and add the toilet paper to the bucket.
So the toilet paper can go in, it's more organic matter.
It'll decompose. Then add your tight-fitting lid to your bucket, and it sits and waits until the next use.
Once your bucket is full, you have a couple of options. Option number 1 is to take the bucket and put it into a covered compost pile. And that way you can rinse out your bucket and reuse it soon. And you're going to need to care for that compost pile, keep it watered, and you don't want it to get too wet, so you don't want rain to get on it, but you don't want it to dry out either. And in about a year, it'll be done.
Another option, option B, is to, once it's full, cap the bucket with the tight-fitting lid, label it with a date, and let it sit for 1 year, and then have a number of empty buckets that you can rotate and date so that you continually have buckets that are available for use.
We're hoping that maybe once you realize that you don't have to poop in water, you might actually not poop in water even when the power goes back on. I have a friend who lives in San Jose in the downtown, and he has a lovely small garden, and he and his wife haven't pooped in water in, I don't know, 15 years or something. And they just have a row of buckets that they do the newspaper method, put the lid on, put it at the end, put the date, and they rotate it through their garage, and by the time they get to a year later, they can take that one out. They dig it into their garden under a perennial tree, and use that bucket again, and they just have this rotating bucket. So it needs to sit about a year in an anaerobic method. Another thing you can do is you can take that bucket and dump it into a larger barrel so that you can keep using the bucket, and then that barrel, again, you want to cap and date and not use again for a year. Once the last goes in, write the date, once it's full.
So once a year of composting has taken place, whether it be aerobic or anaerobic, that compost is a rich nutrient for plants. It can be used for fruit trees, it can be used for perennials, it can be used to add under just a wild tree in the landscape or bushes. And
the diseases that poop carries, that human waste carries, are mostly transferred through water. When you think of dysentery or other diseases, they're mostly transferred through water. So obviously, after you poop, I forgot to mention the step of wash your hands. But other than that, if you do this well and you compost it, the composting process will break down the microbes that cause disease from humans. Whereas if you flush your poop down the toilet, it goes to a sewage treatment plant where they have to use a large amount of toxic chemicals to make that water safe to release out into the world again.
So one other side note is when using your bucket is to try your best to avoid excess urine ending up in your poop bucket. It doesn't hurt to have a separate bucket for urine collection, which can then be diluted with water daily or every other day and added to the landscape. And it is super full of nitrogen and other nutrients to make the garden grow.
It's important for us to note at this point that everything we just told you to do is illegal right now in most of America. You are fairly much required to poop into water by most state and local laws. We encourage you, obviously that's not possible. You now know how to use your human waste in a way that uses little to no water and becomes a benefit to the landscape instead of creating a toxic environment, and frees you from being dependent on PG&E or other major corporations just to be able to take a poop. So we encourage you to talk to your local government officials and try to make composting toilets a legal and maybe even required part of new buildings in California.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Call of Nature.
And the Poop Sisters.